Swan on his way back to town last night. Listen.
I want a cap on credit card interest rates because, some of them are 28, almost 30%. And people out there, they're working and they have no idea that they're paying 30%. No way. We're putting a one-year cap at 10%, and that's it. They've really abused the public. The credit card companies have totally abused it. I'm not going to let it happen.
The problem is he doesn't really have a say in that, does he? It's the beginning of our conversation with Nathan Dean, whose phone's been ringing off the hook for a whole new set of reasons today. As senior policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, he is our connection to you, the terminal subscriber, the real world. Great to see you, Nathan. Hope it was a good weekend. I've got to ask you about this because your phone was ringing about credit card legislation.
Yep.
Now your phone's ringing about what the president wants to do with credit cards, and it's coming at a very sensitive time for the banks. First of all, you cannot do this with an EO, correct?
Correct.
Could Congress do this with legislation?
Yes.
Okay.
So most of the credit card legislation right now is at the state level, but if you had federal legislation that overran that, and this is similar to legislation that Senators Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley put out. Now, they would call for a 5-year cap. President Trump obviously calls for a 1-year cap. But when President Trump says that this is effective January 20th or the companies would be in violation of the law, we're not exactly sure what he means by that. We really don't think that he has the authority, at least, it's uncertain to us what authority he'd be using here. So I think what plays out is that President Trump calls for Congress to pass this bill.
Okay.
And there could be discussions, there could potentially be hearings. But the Senate Banking Committee in particular and the House Financial Services Committee, they're going to want to get back in control of this situation. They don't want being run from the White House. So when you get hearings, you get debate, you get negotiations, you don't lead to a bill that's passing right now. You potentially would get a bill that's passing later this year, right around the midterms, and I just don't think that that's going to happen. The banks are going to be really allied with their, banks are going to be really pushing their opposition to this. We saw statements from the Bank Policy Institute, for example, on this. So I just don't think this is really going anywhere. The one thing that the administration could do is they could continue to use the bully pulpit.
Yep.
And if they had a CFPB, a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that was working, they could put pressure on the banks because this falls under the jurisdiction of the CFPB, but the CFPB is not working right now.
Right.
So again,
this would be the purview of
Yes.
consumer protection, though, right?
Yep.
So he takes to just looking at his post here. Thank you, James. Please be informed that we will no longer let the American public be ripped off by credit card companies charging interest rates of 20, 30%, even more. All caps right in the middle of this post is the word affordability, exclamation point. And he wants this effective Jan 20, 2026. That's the anniversary, right? This is straight out of the State of the Union, correct? This is going to fall right under institutional buyers of single-family homes are, I want banned.
Yep.
And defense contractors should not be giving dividends to investors, to shareholders, or buying stocks back.
Absolutely.
All of these are out of the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders book.
Yep.
What is going on in this Republican administration?
Well, look, affordability is the issue for the midterm elections, and Virginia, New Jersey.
So just grab a page.
Yeah, I mean Virginia, New Jersey, New York, the special elections in Georgia. Democrats are winning big right now over the idea of affordability, and until we have a change of tariff strategy, which we could potentially get on Wednesday with the Supreme Court, until we get a change of tariff strategy, the discussion amongst the White House is try and get affordability back into the idea here.
Yep.
Now the thing is with affordability, in your interview with Patrick McHenry last week, this is where I'm telling my clients to go, because you had an interview with Patrick McHenry last week, the former House Financial Services Committee chairman, talking about this housing ban for institutional purchases of single families.
Yes.
And he talked about this unsilent Republican folk out there, and I'm specifically looking at the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee. They are not going to be on board with what the White House is doing in terms of private equity and banks and so forth at the moment. And the easiest solution for them is to stay silent and drag the issue out until the issue goes away. And so I think that's the most likely scenario, both for housing and this credit card ban, is that they're going to study the issue. They're going to say, yep, we're going to look at it. We're going to have conference calls. We're going to discuss it. But again, it's an election year. It's going to be very difficult to pass.
Did you hear that, James? He's promoting our stuff. Nathan Dean endorsement. It was a pretty good interview. All right, so let's add Jay Powell. It was already a weird day in the Banking Committee, Financial Services Committee, and then they see this post from Donald Trump, or from Jay Powell, I should say. I'm getting my names messed up here, with a video message throwing back on this decision by the DOJ to issue grand jury subpoenas here. We're in a wild moment, Nathan. The market at the moment doesn't seem to care all that much Where are we here at the start of earnings reporting season? Up 80 or down 80, up 72, ho-hum. When does this become a problem?
So it's not a problem yet. I mean, my colleague Elliot Stein and I had a call for clients this morning, and what we told our clients was this, is that Elliot thinks on this potential indictment, potential criminal conviction, his word is it fizzles out. It most likely goes nowhere. I mean, his rule of thumb is that it's easy to get a subpoena. A ham sandwich could get a subpoena, but it's much more difficult to actually translate that into something else. Yeah. Now, the question is that what happens with Dr. Myron's position in January? What happens with Jerome Powell? What happens with Kevin Hassett in terms of being potentially the next Fed chairman? Senator Tom Tillis has said that he's going to oppose any nominee in the Senate Banking Committee until this is quote unquote resolved. Yeah. Now, we don't know what the definition of resolved is, but Senator Tillis can make it extremely difficult for the Republicans or for President Trump to advance a new chairman, if you will. But we go back to the idea is that Jerome Powell's term as governor doesn't end until January 2028. Yes. If he wants to stick around and make life difficult for the president, he can. Then you're potentially talking about a different types of shadow chair. And at the end of the day, it's the FOMC that decides who the chairman of the FOMC is, not the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And so if the FOMC decides that whoever President Trump selects they don't like, they can always elect somebody else. Jay
Powell with the video, did that surprise you when you saw this out of nowhere?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the attacks that the White House has pushed on the Federal Reserve over the last 6-9 months, you know, he always has this very calm, measured response.
You can't upset this guy.
But the fact that he went out in a video on a Sunday night during the Chargers-Patriots game, you know, that was kind of surprising. And so, you know, but I will think
he was feeling weird about Bob Weir, right? He was already having a bad weekend, massive deadhead, got the subpoena. He called the camera crew. Yeah. That's how it went?
Yeah, and I think what happened was by calling the camera crew, you know, he was trying to make sure that the bond markets realized that this is important. You know, the bond market's somewhat subdued because I think they want to see...
Is that true?
I think this is my guess.
Well, how many calls did you get today about it?
5, 6. I mean, it was...
Okay, so there's some people that are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is concerned, but they want to see how the process plays out because the idea here is the base scenario is that this is a pressure campaign. And that similar like you saw with, you know, Comey and all these other indictments, that potentially there could be some walking back of this. I think that's the scenario, the base scenario at the moment. But they want to see how this plays out. And the note that Elliot and I put out, and then, you know, talked to our clients this morning, Elliot put out, you know, we think this fizzles out.
Wow. All right. So, boy, everybody's upset. We've established that. The banks are upset. The politicians on the committees, the banking, financial services committees are upset. The Fed chair is upset. Probably the whole Fed is upset, maybe minus Myron. You drop a crypto market structure bill on a Monday here, and you're already at odds with the banks. Did this just get a lot more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was a bank right now, or I was a politician who was allied with the banks, I'd be somewhat livid at at just what's going on. The banks are getting angry. I mean, right now you have this crypto market structure bill where you have the crypto platforms like Coinbase going up against the banks over this idea of paying rewards or yield on stable coins.
Could you quickly, when we say rewards, what are we talking about? That's the equivalent of an interest rate or of a yield like on a bond, is that correct?
So essentially instead of the stablecoin issuers who are prevented from paying any type of reward or yield, you know, on it, they're just getting their partners like Coinbase, third-party platforms, to do it on their behalf. Now, it's not on their behalf, but it's just, you know, essentially that's what's happening here. And it's legal. I mean, it's absolutely legal. So what the banks want to do is they want to be able to say, look, if that's happening, we want to be able to do something similar. And so you have this argument where the crypto folks are saying, look, you know, this has already been settled. We don't want to go back to this. The banks are saying, look, we don't want to. And both sides are they're vowing to pull their toys and saying, look, I'm not going to play unless we get our way. And it's just being much more difficult. And you throw this whole credit card ban into the mix, I think the banks are getting a little angry at the moment.
Coinbase is putting pressure on lawmakers here about this whole thing. We've got a good story on this. The bill unveiled today as the biggest crypto exchange says it may consider its support for this bill, to your point, if this doesn't change. It's bank earnings week. What are these conference calls going to be like in the next couple of days?
I think the calls are going to essentially be like, what is the feasibility of this going? But at the end of the day, please remember this from a bank investor perspective. You have the Federal Reserve on the deregulatory front who's about to return a lot of bank capital to you.
There you go.
The ESLR final rule that came out around Thanksgiving returns about $13 billion. Now, we're still waiting a Basel III proposal. We're also waiting a G-SIB surge proposal.
Yep.
Those two proposals in particular, we think, if it plays out the way that we want, back in the napkin math, around 60 to 65 billion in capital back to the banks. That's what the banks are looking for at the moment. So they want to see what the feasibility of this credit card ban is.
Wow,
we don't think it's very high, but ultimately that bank deregulation, that's what those big banks are wanting.
This is so great. You're not going to hear this stuff from anybody else. You get this before everybody writes about it. Lastly, we've got a minute. We are told that discord over the ICE shooting, the killing in Minneapolis, could hang up debate over a homeland funding bill, which leads to a shutdown at the end of the month. Are you changing your odds right now?
No, we're still at a 30% chance of a shutdown because of the calendar. This week, War Power Resolution, Votorama, they focus on that. Then they're gone for a week. This is the Senate. They're gone for a week. Then they come back. They have 3 days to figure it out. And when you only have 3 days to figure it out, I say they kick the can. And they have the bigger fight in February or March.
Is that like a couple weeks? February or March?
Yeah.
There's a couple months.
Yeah.
CR. All right. Now you can go back to bed. We just played the whole thing out for you. Thank God for Nathan Dean. In the fleece, by the way, you know things are going to be okay. I know you were nervous when you got up this morning, but we got Nathan Dean and the comfort of America's dad.